students, in this video I am going to explain you about the water, which is the compound of hydrogen. So we know very well about the water. It is one of the most abundant compound of hydrogen, and our earth's surface mostly 70% is covered by the ocean and sea, which is nothing but the water. But still, when you take the sea water, it contains so much of minerals. The very well known mineral to us is a sodium chloride, that is a common salt. Like that common salt, there are many dissolved salts present in the sea water. So the water, it is an elixir of life. Without that we cannot live. So it is essential for all the living things. And our own body contains, our body, the human body, it is made by 65%. It is made by 65% of our body is nothing but the water. When you go for the physical properties of the water, we know very well water is a colorless, odorless, tasteless. Apart from this, this is a volatile liquid. What is meant by volatile? Volatile means easily evaporating. So if you just keep the bowl of water in the sunlight, in the evening if you go and see that, it would have been evaporated. The simple thing you can see, if your mom washed the clothes and if she dries in the sunlight, in the evening it would have been dried. So what happened there? The water have evaporated. So it is having the volatile nature. And the peculiar property of water in the condensed phase. What is meant by condensed phase? The phase at which all the three phases, that is the solid phase ice, and the liquid phase water, and the gaseous phase water vapor are all present. So this is due to the presence of the intermolecular hydrogen bond between the water molecules. So the hydrogen bonding is responsible for this hydrogen bonding. This intermolecular hydrogen bonding is responsible for the high melting point and the boiling point. We all know the melting point of water is 0 degrees Celsius and its boiling point is 100 degrees Celsius. So why we have this boiling point and melting point? That is due to the intermolecular hydrogen bond between the water molecules. And now let us see the structure of the water. The oxygen is present in the center, and both the side of the oxygen, the hydrogen will be present. We may think that it will be having a linear structure, but why this is not having a linear structure? It is having a bent shape. That is, the hydrogen, the two hydrogen are present, framing the angle 104.5 degree between the oxygen. So why it is so like that? This is due to the presence of two lone pair of electrons present in the oxygen. So these lone pairs, they repel each other so that the hydrogen will become closer from the linear structure to the bent structure. And now some of the properties of the water molecule. If you see the normal water, its molecular weight is 18.015 and the heavy water 20.02 and the tritium with the 22.03. And the melting point, they differ little. 273 Kelvin for the water, 276.8 Kelvin for the heavy water, and for the radioactive water it is 277.5. And the boiling point also they will change very little. And the temperature at the maximum density, for the water it is 277, for D2O it is 284.2 and T2O it is 286.4, and I think so others you can go through. And following this, let us see what some of the chemical properties of water. We all know the water, it is soluble and it will make everything to dissolve in that. So let us see some of the properties. First let us see in the S block element. S block element contain two sets of the alkali metals and the alkaline earth metals. If you take the alkali metals, even in the cold, the water can react with the alkali metals, forming their hydroxides. So sodium, one of the alkali metal I am taking. So sodium reacts with the water to give sodium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. Children, while you are learning, please note down, you should not pronounce the chemical with the symbols. Don't say as Na plus H2O. Your mind should read that as H2O, but at the same time your mouth should pronounce that in the word. Sodium plus, that is, reacts with H2O, water, gives, the arrow mark indicates gives, so 2 sodium hydroxide and hydrogen. When you take the alkaline earth metal, it will not react with the cold. But with normal water, the alkaline earth metal reacts except the beryllium. We all know, mostly the first element will differ from the other element. So, the beryllium will not give the same reaction. So, let me take the next element, or the one of the element from that, barium. Barium, when it reacts with the water, it will give a barium hydroxide, as like the alkali metals. The only difference we find is, when you take the alkali metals hydroxide, that is when you take the sodium hydroxide, they are more soluble hydroxide, but these alkaline earth metal hydroxides, when you compare with the alkali metal hydroxide, they are less soluble hydroxides. And next, following that, let us go to the transition metals. With the transition metals, according to the temperature, the reaction will occur. So, they will give a oxides along with the formation of the hydrogen. Here I have taken iron as the example. When a red hot iron is passed over the hot steam, that is a water vapor, it will give a ferric oxide, Fe3O4. FeO is called as the ferrous oxide. Fe2O3 is called as ferric oxide. Joining these two, we will get Fe3O4. This is called as ferric oxide. When you take the lead and the copper, they will decompose water at a white heat. What is meant by white heat? You know the red hot. Red hot means you have to heat the metal till it becomes red hot. Same time, if you heat some metals more than this red hot, they are capable of giving the white light. So that temperature is called as the white heat. So the lead and the copper will decompose the water only at the white heat. Other metals such as the silver, gold, mercury, platinum, they will not react with the water. Apart from this, when we take the non-metals such as the carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, normally they will not react with the water. Suppose if they react in a particular temperature or condition, they will form a acidic oxides. So first let us go with the halogens. Halogens, you all know, chlorine, bromine, iodine, fluorine. So fluorine being a first element, it will differ from the other element. So when you so let me explain first with the chlorine. When a chlorine, when it reacts with the water, this will give a acidic acids or acidic oxides, which is a HCl, we all know already, hydrochloric acid, and HOCl, that is called as hypochlorous acid. This hypochlorous acid is having a antibacterial action as well as the bleaching action. Same time, when the fluorine, when it reacts with the water, that will give the hydrofluoric acid and oxygen. So this is the difference between the other halogens and the fluorine when it reacts with the water. And let us see some of the compounds of the non-metal. That is the carbon is a non-metal. This carbon, when it combines with the oxygen, it is giving a carbonate. So any carbonate, when this carbonate is treated with the water, this is giving a bicarbonate and the hydroxide. This bicarbonate it is having a it is slightly alkaline. So you will be getting a two types. Either the compounds of the non-metal, when it reacts with the water, they may give a acidic solution or a slightly alkaline solution. Here the bicarbonate is a slightly alkaline solution. Then water as an amphoteric oxide. What is meant by amphoteric oxide? Amphoteric oxide means it can give both the acidic and the basic nature. Here the example is given with the ammonia and hydrochloric acid. When water reacts with the ammonia, it is giving a ammonium and hydroxide. So at the same time, when it reacts with the hydrochloric acid, so with the ammonia it is acting as an acid, and it is with the hydrochloric acid it is acting as a base. So with the water, the hydrochloric acid, when it reacts, it is giving a hydronium ion and the chloride ion. So what is meant by amphoteric oxide? Amphoteric oxide means the water molecule is capable of accepting as well as donating the proton. If you see the first example, it is donating the proton, that is, it is giving the hydrogen from that to the ammonia. But when you see the second example, it is accepting the proton, it is accepting the hydrogen from the HCl forming H3O plus. Then with the covalent compounds, it can be the water molecules is also capable of reacting with the sum of the covalent compound, forming either its oxides and as well as the acids. So when you take the silicon tetrachloride, when it reacts with the water, it is giving a silicon dioxide and the hydrochloric acid. If you take the phosphorus pentoxide, it is, when it reacts with the water, it is giving the phosphoric acid. H3PO4 is called as the phosphoric acid. And let us next move to the one more interesting chapter, that is the formation of the crystals. You can see the crystals, salt crystals. So how the salt crystals are formed? Some of the salt crystals are formed by observing the water, that is called as the water of hydration. So they'll observe some of the water and then they'll form a crystal. You would have seen a copper sulfate crystal. If not, I'll show you in the lab. So these crystals, as a copper sulfate, we pronounce this as a copper sulfate, but actually this is a copper sulfate pentahydrate. The blue color crystals is nothing but the copper sulfate pentahydrate, that is the copper sulfate which absorbs the 5 water molecule for producing the crystals. So many salts crystallize forms the aqueous solution form a hydrated crystals. The water in the hydrated salt, they may form the coordinate bond or just present in the interstitial position of the crystals. Example, if you take the hexa aqua chromium chloride, that compound is called as a coordination compound. How it is named? Hexa, H2O is called as aqua. So hexa aqua chromium 3 chloride. So here all the 6 water molecules forms a coordinate bond. Then when you take the barium chloride dihydrate, 2 water molecules present. So I call this as a dihydrate. Here both the water molecules are present in the interstitial position. When you take the copper sulfate pentahydrate, that is the copper sulfate with 5 water molecule. In this compound, the 4 water molecule in that are coordinately bonded with the copper sulfate and 1 is present outside of the coordination bond. So this is given in the picture here. So following this, children, let us move to the hardness of water. What is meant by, in the beginning itself when we see the water, we said the water may contain the minerals. So according to the amount of minerals present in this, we can say the water is hard or soft. So the most common ions found in the hard water are the soluble metals such as the magnesium and the calcium. Though we have little more elements, that is the manganese, iron, aluminum are also present, but when you say the hardness of the water, the two elements that come in our mind is the calcium and magnesium. These calcium and magnesium will be present in the water as a bicarbonates or as the sulfates or as the chlorides. It can be present in any of these three salt forms. That is calcium sulfate, calcium chloride, calcium bicarbonate, or magnesium sulfate, magnesium chloride and magnesium bicarbonate. It can be present like anything. So when these salts are present, then we call that water is hard. So when it is removed, when the hardness is removed from the water, then we call the water have become soft. So the mineral free, the water free from the soluble salts of the calcium and magnesium are called as the soft water. So this hardness of water can be greatly classified into two: temporary hardness, which can be easily removed, and permanent hardness, which we need some effort. We have to put some effort to remove. So first let us see the temporary hardness and its removal. As I told you already, the three anions are present in the calcium and magnesium, that is bicarbonate, sulfate and chloride. If the bicarbonate is present, it is easy to remove. So the temporary hardness is nothing but the calcium or magnesium bicarbonate is present in the water. Then it is called as a temporary hardness. How this can be removed? This can be removed easily by two methods. One method is called as boiling and another method is called as the Clark's method. Boiling is a usual method. When you boil, what happens? The bicarbonates will be converted into, the bicarbonates are soluble one, and this bicarbonates will be converted into carbonate, which is insoluble. So if it is calcium bicarbonate, it will be converted into calcium oxide, water and carbon dioxide. If it is magnesium bicarbonate, it will be converted into magnesium carbonate, water and carbon dioxide. But when you say the magnesium carbonate, they can again combine with the water to form the magnesium hydroxide, which is again insoluble. So then you can filter this. When you filter this precipitated, you can see this when you boil water. When you boil water for your own purpose of drinking, when you boil the water, sometimes when it settles down, you can find out down you will be having a dust like that is nothing but the precipitate of either magnesium carbonate or the calcium carbonate. So it can be just filtered. So alternate method for this is a Clark's method. In this Clark's method, we are using a calcium hydroxide. This calcium hydroxide is treated with the bicarbonates. The calcium bicarbonate or magnesium bicarbonate. So they will form the calcium carbonate, as well as if it is with the magnesium bicarbonate, they also form the magnesium hydroxide. So these are insoluble, so they can be filtered easily and we can remove this temporary hardness. So how to remove the permanent hardness? So main thing, we have to remove this calcium salt and the magnesium salt. So kindly remember that. So the permanent hardness are due to the presence of the soluble salt of the magnesium and the calcium. Is nothing but the calcium chloride, calcium sulfate, magnesium chloride and magnesium sulfate. So this can be removed when it is treated with the washing soda. Washing soda is nothing but the sodium carbonate. So when the sodium carbonate is treated with the calcium chloride or magnesium chloride, then this will form a calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate, which is an insoluble one, leaving the sodium chloride. So this will not affect anything because we have removed the calcium and the magnesium. And same time if you take a calcium sulfate or magnesium sulfate, when it is treated with the sodium carbonate, they will form either the calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate, leaving behind the sodium sulfate, which will not affect the hardness of the water. So the another method which can be used for the remove the permanent hardness is the ion exchange method. And for this ion exchange method, we'll be using the zeolite. So what is the zeolite? Let us see that now. So the zeolite are the hydrated sodium aluminosilicates. Its formula is Na2O, that is a sodium oxide, aluminium oxide Al2O3 with X SiO2, X silica and Y water molecule. Here what is the X? X may extend from 2 to 10 and Y may extend from 2 to 6. So it may contain 2 to 6 water molecule and 2 to 10 silica molecule. So this zeolite, it will be like a honeycomb. You can see the structure here. It will be contain a honeycomb. So here this structure, the green color indicates the presence of the sodium in that. So when it reacts with this here hard water which contains the calcium or magnesium, you know the charge carried by the calcium and the sodium carries plus charge and the calcium and the magnesium they carries plus 2 charge. So this green places are occupied by the purple color which indicates the calcium or the magnesium. So that it will remove. So the complex structure can conveniently presented by the sodium with zeolite which as an exchangeable cation, that is a sodium with zeolite. When it reacts with the metal 2 plus, it will give the metal with zeolite and the sodium ion. Same time we can regenerate this by treating it with the sodium chloride again. So that is when the metal with the zeolite, when it's treated with the sodium chloride, again we will be getting back the sodium with zeolite and the metal chloride. And following this, children, let us see. So when you see the while washing the clothes, some of the water they lather soap, some will not lather soap. That is, some will not produce foam more and some will produce, as a hard water will produce less foam. They will form some precipitate like. Why it is so like that? So the cleaning capacity of the soap is reduced when used in a hard water. The soaps are the nothing but sodium or potassium salt of the fatty acid, higher fatty acids, nothing but the oils. So when the soap is added to the hot water, this magnesium or calcium present in the hard water, they react with the soap and they will make the soap to precipitate. That's why it is not foaming. So now let us see about the heavy water. The formula we know heavy water D2O. Suppose if a 5000 parts of water molecule is present, means in that one part will be the heavy water. So the heavy water can be, it will not undergo hydrolysis or electrolysis easy as like the normal water. It is also colorless. A colorless, we cannot say it will be having a light blue color. So odorless and the tasteless liquid. And there's a little difference between the physical properties which we have already seen. And when you see the heavy water, it is mostly used in the nuclear reactor as a moderator as well as a coolant. What is the part of the moderator in the nuclear reactor? That the moderator will slow down the fast moving neutrons. So the neutrons will be moving very fast in the nuclear reactor. So if we want to use it in a constructive purpose, means then the neutron should be slowed down. For slowing down that, we are using the heavy water. Same time the nuclear reactor will become so much of heat. So to cool it, as a coolant it is used. And it is also used as a tracer to study the organic reaction mechanism. So how it is used as a tracer, that let us see in the next slide. The heavy water is used in the exchange reactions. That is the sodium hydroxide, when it's treated with the heavy water, it will give a NaOD plus HOD. Hydrochloric acid, it is, that is the place of the hydrogen is replaced by the deuterium. So these reactions are useful in determining the number of the ionic hydrogens present in the compound. So how many hydrogen present there are easily replaceable. Like that it is used to study. For example, if you take the phosphoric acid, phosphorus acid. Phosphoric acid formula is H3PO4. Phosphorus acid formula is H3PO2. And we already studied what is the basicity. Basicity is nothing but the number of replaceable hydrogen ion present in an acid. If you take the, that is H3PO4 phosphoric acid, the phosphoric acid basicity is 3. That is, it can replace all the 3 hydrogen. Same time, if you take the phosphorus acid, though its formula is H3PO4, it is a dibasic. It can replace only the 2 hydrogen. How come I know this? I know this from the exchange reaction with the heavy water. When I go for the exchange reaction of the phosphorus acid, it will gain only 2 deuterium. Same here, the example given is with the hypophosphorus acid, H3PO2, though it have 3 hydrogen, out of this only 1 hydrogen is replaced, showing that it is a monobasic acid. Same time, the heavy water is also used to prepare some of the compounds, like when the aluminium carbide, when it reacts with the heavy water, it will be giving the aluminium with the heavy hydroxide. Same thing you can see in the calcium carbide, when it reacts with the heavy water, it will be giving a calcium heavy hydroxide with the C2D2. Just it is a replacing reaction. And the magnesium nitride, when it reacts with the heavy water, whatever reaction you are getting for the water, the same thing you will get for the heavy water also. Here you are getting the magnesium heavy hydroxide and the heavy ammonia. And the phosphide, calcium phosphide, when it reacts with the heavy water, it will be giving the calcium heavy hydroxide and the heavy phosphine. So by this, I have completed the water and the heavy water, children. In the next class, let us learn about the hydrogen peroxide.